Red or blue? Everyone in the world is presented with a blue button and a red button and told to choose one. If more than half the world picks the red button, all the people who pick the blue button will die. If more than half the world picks the blue button, then no one dies. Picking the red button guarantees your safety. Additionally, if every single person in the world chooses red, then no one will die. Assume you cannot discuss the decision with anyone else prior to making it. Which do you choose? We have here Leo, who is representing Team Red, Ella, representing Team Red, Kian, Team Blue, and myself, also Team Blue. So, who wants to start with their logic?
Okay, as a member of Team Red, I personally would choose red based on the idea that I don't think it is on me to have to put my life on the line for the naivety of others in believing that the whole world will choose blue, or more than half will choose blue. I think maybe Team Blue is thinking too much of just us and people with a moral compass more. Because when I think of the world as a whole, I have met many, many people, I'd say even half of the world, who have very little regard for other people. And so I think they would just, by virtue of selfishness and maybe hatred, choose themselves and choose red. And I think that as well as that, there's also just people like me who believe that it's not on us to put our life on the line and our existence, killing ourselves.
So you would choose red because you think everyone else would choose red and you don't want to die?
Yes, and I also just think that choosing blue, what's the outcome? Not everyone dies.
No one dies.
Yeah, no one dies, but you're likely to die because it's very unlikely that most of the world will choose blue. And what's choosing red? You're not killing anyone directly.
Technically you are.
I wouldn't say so, because based on the idea that basically everyone will choose red, which is just what's going to happen. Like, there's no universe, in my opinion, in which people will choose blue.
Yeah, wait, can I add something? It's just like, in this world, like, you'd actually have to be, if you thought about it properly, there are more selfish people than there are selfless people, if you think about it in that aspect. So choosing blue is almost guaranteeing that you die. So I just don't understand why you would choose blue after thinking about it properly, because you're just, I suppose you're just lying to yourself if you think that people will choose blue and that you're going to live.
Okay, do you want to argue that?
First of all,
Team Blue time now.
I would like to point out that the assertion that it's impossible that more than half of people would choose blue is, in my opinion, fairly baseless. I think the data does not give very strong support to this, as we will see later.
The data's right.
So what?
Furthermore,
Okay.
I think it is wrong to characterize people choosing blue as naive. I think that's an incorrect and not necessarily accurate characterization. I think it is not necessary that people who choose blue be naive. I think there are plenty of logical reasons for choosing blue.
Namely?
For instance, I think it is perfectly logical to believe that most people would choose blue, and I also think it is perfectly logical to believe that not choosing blue is tantamount to murder.
Could I just say something? So I suppose there's that whole talking point of people who choose blue have a stronger moral compass, but a moral compass isn't necessarily just choosing the most selfless way. It's more so a moral compass is knowing the difference between right and wrong.
So as a blue person, I would say it's not morally incorrect to choose red. As so I actually think I'd agree that most of the world would choose red. But
Bro, are you saying you want to die?
no, listen, I'll tell you my argument. So basically, the people who choose blue, most of them at least, will be the people who believe that most of the world can choose blue. So they're more, if not naive, more optimistic at least about the way that the world works and the fact that people will be more selfless. And so then if red wins and all those people then die, the world is going to be a really shitty place. Like, everyone left is going to be the people who are, quotation marks, realists and who won't bring about a lot of change and probably make the world worse, because the people who make the world better are going to be the blue people who want to see better like morals in the world and stuff like that.
So on that note, do we think that choosing red is a selfish thing to do?
No.
But that was a good link.
I don't think it is selfish to choose, not just to choose you. Like, okay, let me phrase this. I do not think it is selfish to want to live. I don't think it is selfless to want to kill yourself for no reason. Okay, but I know you guys are saying that it isn't unlikely or isn't impossible that everyone chooses blue. I do think it is. I think that we have a biased sample. I think that if we realistically got the entire world, it would be a lot more red.
And why do you
Okay.
say that?
Because I think our friends are a lot more optimistic and
So,
a lot more caring
let's-
of other people than maybe the wider
Let's
world.
introduce the data. So I sent out 2 Microsoft forms. The first one was 65% to red compared to 35% to blue out of 17 responses. And this was mostly out of our friend group. So it's quite a biased sample. The second survey that I sent out had more than 30 responses, but I got rid of all the ones that said I chose this because it's my favorite color. And that had 53% red compared to 47% blue. And this is a much less biased sample. I got people to send it to other people, and my parents' friends answered it. So it's still probably biased because it's still around me, convenient sampling, but it is more broad than the first one. And this shows more blue. Even though it's still majority red, it's much more blue than the other one.
And I think this data does bear out the fact that the assertion that, our friend group is more likely to choose blue has no data supporting it. I think
Yeah, our friend group chose more red.
Yeah.
our data, it doesn't allow us to make a strong conclusion either way with any sort of
Of
strength.
what the whole world
Well,
would choose.
I
Agree.
think you could argue that there's no way to make a proper conclusion unless we were actually placed in this scenario.
Yeah, also because
That
the
is true.
hypothetical, there is a more than likely chance that more people will say blue than those who will actually, because it's thinking about it more logically without the fear of actually dying,
Yeah,
which
there's-
would probably
there's-
force more people to
They
choose
just say
red.
there's low ecological validity in this
Psych
this
students.
experiment because
Psych student L.
we're not actually in a scenario where we're faced with the possibility of dying. It's only a hypothetical. So if we were actually faced with the possibility of dying, I do think that some people who may have said that they picked blue would have picked red just because self-preservation is innate. It's our number one instinct is to self-preserve. So I do think that perhaps the data is not super viable.
I was talking about it with my dad as well, and he brought up an interesting point. He said, does it make it... So he said blue, and he said that people who chose red are selfish. And he suggested, do younger people have more of a right to choose red because they have lived more? Because this has got more older people, and more of them have chosen blue compared to our group, which were all 16, 17-year-olds who chose red. So there could be that at
Like
hand
we have
as well.
more to live for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, from my point of view, I'm thinking maybe I'm more of a pessimistic person, but I do not personally think that, for instance, if you got our year level, right? Us in our year level are probably on the nerdier side. It's true, you can't
yourself.
argue it. And I would argue that people like our friend group probably would look at this question and critically think it a lot and be like, oh, for the good of humanity, choose blue. If I'm looking at our year level as a whole and our school as a whole, looking at each person individually, I can see that red would definitely be.
I could definitely agree
You
with
know what I
that.
mean, right? And also, I think that your dad may have a point because I think as young people, the older generations are a lot more, I'd say, optimistic in that we have the onus and burden of climate change. And on us, older people are just like, like we're doing what's best for the world. We're doing what we can. But we're seeing that that's not true. We're seeing that the people that we were meant to rely on growing up have failed us in at least climate change. You know what I mean?
That make
The
them
economic
more
crisis.
pessimistic, and then okay.
Yeah,
Because
I'd say we're a lot
I feel
more
like
pessimistic.
I don't know if I've misremembered what you've said here, but I'm pretty sure you said earlier that our friend group was a biased sample because we'd be more optimistic. Did you not just say the opposite?
No. I'd say as a whole, I would say that we are probably more optimistic for our sample of our year level, right? That's our year level as a whole, if we're looking at it. And in general, I don't think our friend group is the kind of people to go on climate strike. We're probably a bit too focused on school.
So what you're saying is that our year level, or the younger generation as a whole, is more pessimistic about the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore they will believe that the rest of the world will choose red. And then in order to not die, they'll also choose red.
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
That's your argument.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm saying that.
But statistically, I think actually most of the world is not our generation, right?
Yes, I agree. But I think from my point of view, it is more likely that our generation would choose red. That's
But
just,
this is about the whole world.
yes, but I'm just saying from my point of view, I'm probably more on the pessimistic side. So I'm saying I also choose red for that. I do not view most of the world as selfless. I'd say most of the world is selfish and would probably choose red. As in, like, I think that is a viable reason that, or not viable, that is a reason that a lot of people choose red.
Okay, but if everyone does choose red, then all the blue people who are optimistic will die.
Yes.
And then the world will be just ruined because they're like
How
nothing
can you say
good
it
happen.
will be
Well,
ruined?
because what's left is all the people who think the world is terrible and aren't going to bring
Mm.
about any change.
I would say pessimistic people bring a lot more change than optimistic people.
Why?
That is completely wrong.
Oh no, okay. An optimistic person may look at climate change and be like, oh my god, well, it's not that bad. We don't have to act
Okay.
too hard. But I'm just bringing up climate change as an example because I think that's an issue that affects our generation specifically a
You
lot.
can be optimistic without thinking that everything's going to
Yes,
solve itself.
but then you can also be pessimistic without thinking, oh, everything's gone to shit. We're just going to leave it to go worse.
I would argue that saying, oh, everything's going to sort itself out isn't really a form of optimism. It's more a form of denial.
Yes.
And optimism and denial isn't the same thing.
Yes, but pessimism and
So
like...
I guess
They're
that
not
leads on
mutually
to
exclusive,
are
Yeah.
blue people naive, right? Because are they wrong to think that the world will choose blue?
Well, I,
Looking at the
probably-
talking
I
points.
said they're not necessarily naive, but I do think that an ounce of naivety is involved. And
I think first we should define naive. I'm
Oh, yeah,
looking at
true.
Kian. Can you give
would
a
you
good?
provide
I
a
would
definition
define naiveness as some unawareness of how the world works in some sort of context.
So I think that there are probably a percentage of blue people who are naive in that they genuinely believe that most of the world will choose blue. But from the data we collected, so we had a question that asked, are blue people naive? Most of them who chose blue said no. I realize that most of the world is probably going to choose red, but I'm still going to choose blue
Okay.
for reasons similar to what I said.
Okay, but I feel like I wrote this whole thing
Do you wanna
about.
read it out?
Yeah, wait, let me see.
And I'm going to find some.
Yeah. I wrote this whole thing about like ethics and stuff. I said there are certain limits to what morality can require of us, and they should be determined by the viability of the trade-off. Actions with relatively high moral impacts that require relatively low levels of sacrifice are more likely to be obligatory than actions with the opposite profile. And in this case, a self-sacrificial act that means giving your life in exchange for maybe, depending on what others do, a few people who choose blue is a terrible trade-off. I said maybe a few dumb people, but that's I'm not going to talk about that.
Apart from the dumb bit, I think that is agreeable, and I think
Yeah.
it justifies why. And I agree. I don't think red
Yeah,
people
I
are
don't
selfish.
actually think that blue people are stupid. I
Thank
just
you.
I just wrote that.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, I still don't think that's necessarily an argument in favor of red. At least insofar as it doesn't provide anything beyond justification that they aren't selfish.
Well, I was just, it's just sort of the like subjectivity of what's going on. It's like the morality of it all, because it's, what I said is a moral compass is subjective, and people with good moral compasses should be able to evaluate an issue and understand that you know, a moral compass isn't black and white. You don't always choose the selfless answer or the selfless option just because it's selfless. You have to look at you have to analyze the scenario and understand that, well, that's not always the right option because, as I said before, self-preservation is our number one thing. And if the trade-off is, if it's not a good trade-off, then you should not choose, for example, the blue pill in this scenario. Sorry, I don't know if that's a bit confusing.
I'm just looking at this as well. There's another argument for blue, and it's that it's easier to get a safe majority with blue than with red because you only need 50% success for blue for no one to die.
Yeah,
but you
see-
need 100% success for no one to die with red.
I thought the wording of the... I object to the wording of the question here because the wording of the question says, in an after note kind of, if everyone chooses red, then no one will die. Well, that was implicit in the question. The question doesn't
Yeah.
also say, if everyone chooses blue, then no one will die. It's, in my opinion...
It is a bit of a biased phrasing, I guess.
Yeah, which is your fault because you wrote it.
Yeah, but I was just making sure that people weren't stupid because
Well, clearly everyone
'Cause
seems to
some
think
people-
everyone else is
Okay,
stupid anyway.
that's
So
true.
that's... but yes, I do think that's probably the main reason why I chose blue, to be honest. It's much easier to reach no one dying. In fact, if red wins, it is impossible that no one will die. People will die.
yeah, because there
A
will be one
significant
person that
minority.
chooses blue.
It
and-
won't be one
yeah,
person.
it will be a lot.
like a billion people will
And
die.
especially from the data
Good.
we've gathered, which take with a grain of salt, but it's not a small majority that
I would say at least a billion.
minority. Sorry, it's a large percentage of people.
Yeah.
So that means a lot of people will die, like almost half. Sorry.
Yeah. But you have to think that the probability is not actually a 50-50 of everyone in the world surviving if the majority chooses, you know what I'm saying? It's not.
No.
Okay.
Explain that further.
Like you're saying it's a higher chance that everyone survives if, you know, if you pick blue
Yeah.
or whatever, but it's not actually necessarily true because we have to think about it that, as I said before, there are more selfish people in the world, more people who will think about it pragmatically.
See,
But that's
I
not
don't think
plus
there's
an
I
any...
argument because it's
Okay.
not. You don't know that.
But can I also just say, I don't necessarily think that people choosing blue are more selfless. I just, sorry, just talking point.
From the answers, there are a lot of people who bring up the morally good choice. So I think you said that people who are trying to be selfless,
Yeah. Yeah. keep
and
going.
even if it doesn't inherently make you selfless, there has to be an aspect. Like I know there are a good few people that I've read on this and have talked to that said picking red will mean that some people will die, as Kian said, and if you don't want to partake in the murder of those people, it might not just necessarily be on your hands directly, but it is sort of your fault. And so people picking blue might just not want to have that on their hands and not be responsible for those people, however many or however few, dying.
I'd rather partially partake in a murder than die trying to be selfless. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, in my opinion, not possible that more than half of people will pick blue. If you go out into the world, if we're interviewing the entire world, maybe in Australia more than half the people will pick blue, but like if you're looking in America, can we really expect
I can agree on that part.
But I don't think it's necessarily true that most people are selfish. I think that's completely... It's an unjustified assertion.
I think what's
I-
interesting...
Because,
go.
like, if, for instance, it's fairly commonly accepted that, Western educated, industrialized, rich and democratic societies are among the most individualistic in both across time and space, right? So I think we have an inherent bias here to believe people are selfish, and I don't think
So
that's
you're
a
saying
bias that the data will
individualistic
necessarily...
cultures are going to be more likely to choose red?
Well, yeah, I think there's, at
And
the very
coming
least,
from
a
our-
strong association with...
From our Western point of view, that means that in our area, we're more likely to choose red.
And we're more likely to believe that others will choose red,
Yeah.
which I think is quite pertinent here.
Yeah. I think that a lot of the red arguments are based on, well, everyone else is choosing red from my point of view. So I'll choose red because I don't want to die. But what's interesting is that most of the blue people say that they're going to choose blue regardless of what other people are doing.
And I think this allows us to look quite nicely at if the situation would be different, if you could in fact discuss it with others and could know what others were going to do and how this would impact your decision. So would it impact your decision?
Yes.
Yep.
So if you thought more people were choosing blue, you'd switch to blue.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I would. If I was able to discuss it with a large majority of people, the option to choose blue is safer because essentially, if you can convince the entire world, theoretically, to choose blue, sure, some people who are stupid will still choose red, but it doesn't matter because everyone will survive.
Yeah.
But if you do it the other way around, convince everyone to choose red, some stupid people will still choose blue and they'll die. So the safer option is to choose blue.
If you could discuss with everyone, that here comes back the success rate, because you only need 50% to choose blue for no one to die, but you need everyone to choose red and you need 100% success rate. So then it is smarter.
Natural selection.
It's smarter to convince everyone to choose blue. Mm-hmm. A lot of people who say that they should convince everyone to choose red, their argument is that in that situation, people would be paranoid and the fear that, I don't know, everyone's tricking them will come up, and then if people would then choose red because of that.
But I think that can also work the other way. They can also think, oh, but what if someone does choose blue? I'd better choose blue as well. Which is not a problem.
No, because if it's more scary when it's the red, because that's like, oh, then I'll die. Like if you're convincing people to pick red, they won't be afraid of their own death. But if you're trying to convince people to pick blue, then they'll be like, oh, if everyone's tricking me, I'm going to die. And then you get paranoid.
Asha, can I say that your argument works like even without the discussion point? That's how people are choosing. That's why that's a big reason for why people are choosing the red pill, because they're paranoid that people are going to not choose blue. That's a big reason, most probably.
Yeah, but I think it's necessary. It's more paranoia when you can discuss it, because even if everyone's telling you, we're going to pick blue, you're like, oh, but what if? And then I'll die. Whereas in the original way, you can't discuss it. That's just the belief that everyone's going to pick red. There's no paranoia because you're not, discussing it.
Yeah, I suppose. But
I'd like to bring back up something that you briefly jokingly mentioned, Ella. Natural selection.
yeah.
Do you want to present that
This
argument?
is something that a lot of people have mentioned.
Yeah, there was a surprising amount
Actually,
of people.
wait, it's not a good argument, but it's just. Do you want me to?
Yeah,
A lot of
let's
people have
just say
mentioned it, so it's worth bringing it up, I think.
Yeah.
So it might have been as a joke, but it's still a point.
It's slightly as
so.
this is what I said. I said if people lack critical thinking skills and pick blue out of ridiculous false pretenses or because they think they're being selfless, then I suggest it's a good thing that natural selection takes its course. They certainly aren't going to survive much longer with an utter lack of brain cells.
So
This was a surprisingly common
it's a joke.
argument.
It's a
lot
joke,
of people
by the way.
said that
As I've said before, I don't think
to
that
various
people
degrees
who
of
choose blue are
seriousness.
stupid.
question for the panel then. Do we think natural selection taking its course is a good thing?
In this context.
In any
Oh,
context?
in any context? Okay.
Yes, in most contexts. But
Why?
What do you mean why? Like if we're talking species-wise
Yeah, I
or
was gonna say,
human-wise?
in order to improve as a species.
Yeah,
natural
as
Do you
selection
think,
has to
as a
occur.
species, we should let natural selection take its course generally?
Well, with humans,
if
you
it's-
can't really let
if it's
natural selection take
selection,
course.
that means it's
It
natural.
depends on what our definition means, of natural
Like-
selection is.
Should we try to prevent people from dying because of, because we don't want natural selection to happen?
So we are preventing natural selection. People who get sick, who get cured, that's preventing natural selection.
So it,
Well, to
so
a point.
So
it's
preventing
very-
natural
You have to look at it
selection
in
is
a
good
modern day
thing.
context.
Yes.
I suppose it's
In a modern day, we are saving people from natural selection. So it is considered a good thing because there are people who are doing that. That's the commonly accepted route to take.
but we have to look at what is our definition of natural selection because
Do you know what the psychology
if
definition?
it's like if the biological definition, it's like
Yeah, when
if
I was
people
hearing
with
natural
the-
selection, I thought you guys were talking
Yeah.
about like environmental factors rather than just like specific instances like sickness. Like I thought you meant like with like if there was an ice age to occur.
your
Yeah, yeah.
alleles and stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you have the what is it? The ideal genetic.
Like genotype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
okay,
But
from
like,
us,
I don't do psychology unlike the rest of you, but
Biology.
or biology, God forbid.
There's a lot of saltiness here. Whoa.
I apologize somewhat. So, would natural selection be then letting people who are, less fit to survive die off?
Well, it's like the discussion whether we should use genetic engineering to get rid of genetic diseases like, I forgot what it's called. It's like
Effectively, it's whether we should do eugenics.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think it
For
is?
the dumb people here, which is not me, by the way, what's eugenics?
Okay. So eugenics is a thing that has been attempted multiple times. It's where you basically prevent certain undesirables from having children.
That is not what I was
my
thinking
God.
it was.
Yeah. I mean, this was very much something that was, done by the Nazis.
Oh, yeah.
And also done invented by a very respectable Britishman. Because of course. And
Says the guy with the Irish accent. Sorry.
I don't have an Irish
Of
accent.
course.
It's not Irish.
I know it's British. I'm not stupid.
But
It's Irish.
Dude.
it's just baffling at this
Okay,
point.
anyway.
I distracted
It's
people,
just
sorry.
baffling at this point.
Let's bring back the earlier rule.
Very
No
British,
mocking
very-
people.
Anyway, to get back to mocking the British. Yeah, so it's something that has very much evolved from Darwinist ideas.
Darwinian?
Darwin's
is
the guy
commonly
that made
used term.
he was the person who came up with the first theory of evolution.
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't it Darwinian?
No, it's Darwinist.
It's Darwinist.
What?
And
keep
Darwinism.
going, keep going.
But yes, it's very much inspired by the fact we should let natural selection take its course. Our modern society has prevented this, so we should come in and help.
Help natural selection.
Yeah,
Okay, so the thing of natural selection, it's natural. You can't help natural selection, otherwise it would be artificial.
it's artificially simulating natural selection is basically what eugenics is.
And so that would be bad, right? We can agree that we should not do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So then
a couple
in
hundred
this
years
case,
ago that would be an unpopular opinion probably, but yeah.
but in this case, that means that we shouldn't let natural selection take its course on the blue people, to quote arguments.
I don't think
we
that's
all
shouldn't
agree
let-
on that.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't think any of us think that's a good argument.
I don't think anyone actually believes
I think
in the
it was
natural selection
mostly a
argument. It's more a joke.
But
Yeah,
the fact
yeah,
that
yeah.
it
In my
came
case,
up,
it was a joke.
Yeah.
the fact that it came up so often means that
I just felt we had to discuss it.
yeah, definitely.
because it came up often enough that it was like
I'm pretty
it's
sure
a joke.
one
You
person
needed
in
to
there
see
was
people's
serious.
actions.
yeah, there was at least a few people that genuinely meant it.
Probably.
Yeah, I feel like in this situation, we also need to consider the people who aren't going to read the question and are going to be like, I'm going to pick this because it's my favorite color. That
Imogen.
would not happen in
That
a
is-
real
that is
scenario,
natural
I
selection.
hope. But consider... so, so there
as
were
I said before, you have to look at its low ecological validity
Exactly. So
in this experiment.
that's what I was going to say. If this was a real situation, people will read the question actually, and they will, think about it. But there were people in the survey that answered a color and then said, "Oh, I picked this because it's my favorite color." I deleted those responses, so they're not part of the statistics. But because I think that in a real situation, that's not going to happen. But there were a few, namely one response who chose red because of, I think it's alluding to something like, am I allowed to say it's like blood gang? I don't know what that means. But apparently it's a thing.
Yeah, it's like a gang in America.
It's a gang in America.
What is it?
And he
Are they like racist or something?
No,
He-
I don't think so.
argued all his responses with, "Oh yeah, blood gang for life," and then called the blue people slurs.
And added slurs, yeah.
So this person read the question and chose red for a stupid reason, which will probably happen even if this was a real scenario. So I kept that answer in. Yeah, I just wanted to put that in there.
Oh my god. Can I just add something? I know that this is just an extra point that I thought about. It may seem paradoxical, but I do think there's a slight arrogance to the people who choose blue in terms of thinking that they're going to help a larger cause and thinking that it'll actually work out. I don't know if that
That's
makes
not
sense.
arrogance. That's just optimism.
Do you
I get what you're saying.
like a,
To
just
a
a,
point.
I
a slight-
understand what you're saying. I just think
I
it's
don't.
completely wrong.
Just adding talking points.
But you believe that.
I said that maybe a slight in some people, like
So
they're thinking no, I'm not choosing blue, I'm choosing
Okay.
red. I'm talking about the blue people. I'm thinking that some there might be a slight part of some people because they're like, oh, I'm gonna be part of something bigger than myself. I'm gonna help save all these people,
But-
and I think it's arrogant to think that's actually going to happen.
If you look at the responses, no one actually says that.
Okay, but
But it could be
isn't
something they're
that's-
thinking.
It's implicit,
Yeah.
right?
I still think you're wrong, but I think because I think the data bears out that there's a decent probability that the majority of people will choose blue. So I think it's not particularly arrogant to do something that may in fact help the world. Like I can see where you're coming from. There might be a bit of a savior complex there.
But is a savior
Yeah,
complex
that's
a
what I'm
bad
trying to
thing?
say, I think.
Yes.
That's how people
Yes,
get
Well-
saved.
that's how you get killed.
Well, that's if a savior complex isn't a bad thing because that means you try to save people, which is a
Can I just
thing.
say,
Yeah, but it
Asha,
means
I
putting
feel like you've
yourself in
contradicted-
danger.
Asha, you've contradicted your points. Okay, because you've said before that you think that majority
but
will choose red,
I'm still
but
gonna argue
you'd
for
still
blue.
choose blue.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand that because
So just context
if you're
here.
put in a real world context, you wouldn't want to die.
So okay, here are some samples from the survey that I want to bring some attention to. Someone said blue, and then for the question, explain why you chose what you did, just said trust.
Okay, but no, because I get I actually kind of like this because obviously their intention was just to say like trust me, but also it could be like construed as
Well,
saying like I trust people. You know what I mean?
That's how I
That
interpret
is
it.
how it is.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
if
It's
it
up
was,
to
if it was from
interpretation,
someone
but-
in our friend group, I would agree. It was it's
They're like,
trusted me.
"Trust
But
me."
this is from my parents' generation, and so this person definitely means trust in
Yeah.
humanity.
Yeah, okay. No, I like that.
But it's still a funny response.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, this person is from France, and she did this response to practice her English,
My exchange
and
student.
she said it was very interesting. So I'm happy with that. And she chose blue, and said because you can't say that choosing red button will guarantee safety, people if everyone chose red. Okay, I'm not gonna read the response because the English isn't very good because she speaks
it
French.
is
You're so
good.
mean.
Okay, but okay, she wrote button as bottom every single time.
It's okay, Agatha. Your
We
English
love
is
you
great.
again.
No, her English is good though.
No, yeah, and then she said, "Don't say to Ella that I wrote blue because I know she will laugh about me and say I'm naive, but it's wrong."
It's so funny because I didn't even tell her about this. She just knew that I would choose red.
But her answers were so genuine. Like she was like, for the question of what you would do if you could discuss it with people, she's like, I couldn't convince everyone to choose blue, but it's because it's impossible, but I'll do my best for
Yeah,
it.
it's good.
That is
Aw.
so wholesome. And I'm just gonna say this, okay? This might be controversial to you guys, but most of the people who picked blue, their responses
We're wholesome.
were better.
Oh my god.
What do you mean better?
Well, okay, they
Hey,
were more. None of them insulted the red people.
Hey, I didn't insult the blue
Most
people.
okay, no, I'm not talking about you
It was
directly.
a joke.
But yeah, but even as a joke, that speak to the type of person
Please
who you
stop.
are. And so the people who chose
Enough.
red joke a bit more, and they're like, "Oh, because the blue people are stupid and natural selection." None of the blue people went, "The red people are selfish," and they never went, "Oh, red people are dumb," and their answers were just generally more.
Eloquent?
Because they
Yeah,
know
and
that we're not dumb and we're not
necessarily.
selfish.
There were some good red arguments as well,
So true.
but they were just nicer.
Yeah, but I don't think.
So would you really, if red wins, would you really just want all of them to die? Well, that's a bad
No.
question because you don't want them to die.
No,
But
obviously,
would you want to
another
live in a
point-
world
Another
where
point of my
all they are all
argument,
dead?
Another thing that I talked about was that I said I thought that most of my close friends and family would choose red, so I wouldn't be losing anyone. And I suppose that might be slightly selfish, but in a way also selfless. If you
See,
understand, my
I-
first thought was, what will my close friends and family say?
Some of my logic was that my close friends and family would choose blue.
Yeah, you chose blue, so
And
maybe I was
not
slightly
most,
wrong.
but
my dad said
some
he'd
of my
choose
friends
red. So.
chose blue. My parents chose blue.
I'm surprised actually.
What?
I feel like I would have thought that people like who would come from like a math science background would have chosen red, just because
Because they're more analytical.
because I thought it was the more logical answer.
But it's not logical. Logically, you only need 50% of blue and 100% of red.
but that's just
the
not
pure
gonna
logic.
happen.
Yeah,
But that's the
it's-
pure logic. So then
where-
your argument has a fallacy.
Every
Okay, you learned that
that's
word
the correct
today,
use
calm
of that
down.
word. It's the correct use though.
each argument can be characterized as logical, and I think it's
I think ultimately it's a moral dilemma and there's no right answer. Sorry, keep going.
yeah, I agree with that, and I think
face with
I can see why the red one would be characterized as logical, because there's this common association with logic of like coldness and self-centeredness. You know, logic is so often construed as something unemotional and uncaring, which I think is, well, illogical. I don't think there's any reason to believe that. But I think that's part of why the red one is seen as logical, when really neither is more logical than the other.
I agree.
Yeah. But if you look at the pure, not just that
You're gonna argue for us
blue,
now?
50%. Blue, you need 50%, and red, you need 100%. For me, it boils down to that. So if you're going off pure chance, you'd pick blue.
Yeah, but
But
you're just
you
not
have
gonna
to-
get
but
50%
that's-
You have to
That's
look
a
at actually.
point
You
of
have to
view.
understand the difference between possibility and probability. They're not the same thing.
Sorry, but you're wrong there. Yeah, just because, I mean, it is incorrect to assume that the probability is evenly distributed. It's not an even distribution. It'll be a kind of, normalish distribution, kind of like with it being centered at some point. So it's not, a 50-50 thing. Like, I do agree that you should choose blue because, it's easier to get to everyone surviving with blue. But the probability is the wrong framing, in my opinion.
So this person says they would choose blue, and then says, I have faith that more than half of the world would choose blue. So this is one of those people who you would call naive. And then says, more importantly, the people I love would choose blue, and so by pressing red, I would be risking losing them. So it's like the opposite of what you were
Yeah.
saying
Well-
about, that your friends would choose red.
Yeah. I was saying that I thought that. Well, I knew that my dad told me that he would choose red, so I was thinking, well.
So then the first part of this is you don't know what anyone will do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your answer would have been influenced by knowing already that your dad would choose red, right? But in the first...
No, but I assumed that he would have chosen red, and then he
Okay.
confirmed my belief. I suppose I understand what you're trying to say, but I'm just saying that I had a feeling, but I thought that you would have chosen red. I'm not gonna lie. So
Well-
maybe my intuition is wrong.
My original thought was red. Like I sort of went, oh yeah, red, because I know that most of the world would choose red, and so I don't want to die. But then I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, but I know most of my friends would choose blue, and the world would kind of be bad if everyone who's
Yeah,
quotation marks
understand,
morally correct die.
morally correct.
Have a stronger moral compass.
Okay, but can I just say I already argued about I already counted this.
Yeah,
earlier.
but I do think just from the responses that I was saying that more of the blue people seem like better people. And
Okay.
That's a bold claim.
Yeah, what is a good
Oi,
person?
what are you trying to imply here?
just
But can I just
generally.
say, in terms of moral correctness, from my belief, I think that it's kind of difficult to assert that one or the other is the morally correct option. Because as I said before, it's nuanced, it's very subjective, and a person with a proper moral compass would analyze the situation at hand properly before making the right or wrong decision. It's not necessarily about the selfish or selfless decision. It's more right and wrong, and it's not black and white, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It depends on the scenario, and as I said, you should think about the trade-off. Is what you're gaining for what you're sacrificing, is what you're gaining worth more than what you're sacrificing? And I'm saying that what you're sacrificing is possibly your life for what you could, and what you're gaining is the possibility of saving some people, which you might not do.
And so, do you think that balancing of gaining and sacrificing is the way to evaluate moral situations?
I do think it should be taken into account.
So, what other criteria may there exist that can be used to judge a moral situation?
I'm not a professional regarding ethics.
Some
This is
of
just
your
my-
moral things are very
This is just
questionable.
my contribution to the ethical, because ethics is a huge part of this whole idea. So that's just what my thought process was.
Because, if you look at ethicists, that's what we would call a utilitarian stance, right? It's weighing up the positives and the negatives. And
the
if
greater net
the
positive,
net positive
is the correct
But
choice.
that's not the only way we can look at ethics.
Deontologists, for example, I'm smart. Deontologists say that you should do no wrong act regardless of the greater outcome. So you can't kill someone to save someone, for example. Am I getting that right? Yes. And so then they would probably choose blue because they're saying that you can't risk killing all those people for a majority good outcome.
That's also assuming that blue is the correct option as well.
No, it's just with the knowledge that blue, that if everyone chooses red, then there will be some people who choose blue who die. And so they don't want to take part in that by saying that you can't kill blue people.
Okay, yeah. If we're looking at the correct option as not killing anyone, then I suppose. Well,
There's-
but then again, there's that whole argument like, are we actually killing anyone? Just like maybe you're saying implicit.
Yeah, there's a difference
But, like-
between killing and...
Yeah.
There can be argued that there exists a difference between killing and letting die, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so then in this scenario,
Letting die.
would you say if you choose red, if you were one of the people that choose red, and then red ends up winning and all the blue people die, are you responsible for their deaths? Did you murder them?
Okay.
I think they're responsible for their own
No,
deaths.
have you guys seen the Saw movies?
No, but I agree with you. Wait, what?
Okay, wait.
I agree. I think that they chose the blue button.
Exactly.
They made their
chose-
choice.
Exactly.
The
they
red
made
people.
their bed. Now lie in it.
The red people.
Literally. Their coffin.
The lie.
Oh, they're not selfless because the only thing less will be them. Like, as in they're selfless, they'll be dead.
The large majority of red people, except for maybe that one guy who slurs in his answer, aren't trying to kill the blue people. They just want to. No, they aren't.
Oh, yeah,
They
right.
aren't trying to kill the blue people. They're just
Except
trying
the
to.
slurs guy. He wasn't trying to kill people.
Except, they're just trying to preserve. They're just trying to preserve themselves,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so they're not going. Oh, let's do this to kill people. They're trying to just protect themselves, which isn't selfish because it's a natural human instinct. And that also doesn't mean that they're killing anyone. I think that people who choose blue and who then die are completely responsible for their own deaths.
So
yeah.
you said you said something about it being a natural human instinct there. Does something being a natural human instinct have an effect on whether it's moral?
Let me think about that one.
Yeah, wait.
Let me think about that one.
Well, I'm just saying when instincts come into play, you're not really thinking about
Exactly.
morality. So
Because it's not,
I guess it's like,
because you're sort of not thinking, like it's an instinct, which is different from thinking
Exactly,
thinking system
because-
1 versus system 2. Sorry to bring up
that's right.
psychology.
No.
No, that's so true actually.
So then there will be people who look at it and just go, I want to live, which I wouldn't say is selfish. I don't know the logic behind that, but I think the majority of people will agree it's not selfish. Even the people who picked blue, the large majority, say that it's not selfish. It's not a selfish thing to do.
So you think people shouldn't be held morally accountable for not keeping their instincts in check, so to speak?
Well, you can't keep your instincts in check though. They're instinctual. It's like you can't control them.
I feel like you can to some extent.
Yeah.
But
Like,
the
to
thing
an
is
extent.
it wrong to want to live? I don't think that's
No.
wrong.
Well,
Even if it
I
isn't
suppose
an
it
instinct.
depends on what instinct we're talking about, because if you think about fight or flight, that's something that you can't control.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in this
And-
case, I think even if it's not an instinct, it's not
I suppose
wrong
you can
to want to
ignore
live.
your instincts
'Cause-
and choose the blue pill or whatever.
Yeah.
So I keep saying blue pill. Sorry, it's the Matrix.
No, because I think, right, selfish to me is specifically giving others the very short end of the stick for your pleasure, not just your existence.
own gain.
Yeah, your own gain. I don't think it's a gain to not die.
Yeah.
Like to me,
I would agree.
yeah.
I think not dying is definitely a good thing.
You know, no, no, no.
It's not
You know what I
gain-
mean?
you're not gaining
It's not a
anything.
privilege. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
Yeah. So I don't think that people wanting to live, regardless of whether
It's
or
a
not
right.
it's an instinct.
yeah.
I mean, I
Is-
don't think it's selfish either, but I still think it is a gain.
yeah,
to
no,
not,
no. By gain,
No,
I mean
it's
like
not.
a
It's
sort
in
of
terms of
one
the-
off,
in terms
like
of
a
that you're not
privilege.
losing anything, it's
But,
a gain.
like-
Is that what you're saying?
For
Yes.
instance, do you think? For instance, there's a famous thought experiment. It's the drowning child one. It's pretty
I know this one.
self-explanatory one. There's a drowning child.
Oh,
And the question is,
I just watched a video on this, guys.
most people would say that the morally acceptable thing.
Wait, explain it.
Can I explain it?
Yeah.
So, okay, you're
I've heard of it,
walking
but-
somewhere, wherever, and there's a lake. You're passing a lake, and there's a drowning child in the lake, and you've just bought a pair of shoes that were maybe $100 or something, and you really like these shoes. So your options are: you either keep going, you ignore the child dies, or you go in and save the child, but you ruin your shoes, and you're gonna have to buy new shoes. Right, so you're technically
Can I-
losing $100. The morally thing, very clearly, to the vast majority of people, is to save the child,
Yeah,
right?
everyone's gonna.
Yeah,
this
that's the
comes
point
back
of
to-
it.
this
The
comes
point
back
is
to
that
what I was-
everyone will do
Yeah.
that. But
Because like
what
I-
it's usually used to
Yeah.
illustrate is something completely different here. I'm using it in a different context. But my point is, we would consider it deeply selfish if they didn't let, if they let the child die, even though they're not gaining anything from it, right?
But I think it's because
Oh,
your $100 is not worth a child's life,
Yeah.
right? But in this case,
Yeah, I
this
still
goes-
think it's
this
not
goes-
selfish.
This comes
to-
back to the idea of the moral trade-off. You know, the net
Yeah,
positive outcome
exactly.
is saving the child.
I still think it's not selfish to choose red, but I'm just taking issue with the fact of defining selfish as in terms of gains. I still don't think that works. I still think, regardless, for the points you brought up, it's not selfish to
I
choose
see what
red.
you're saying. That's a very
But
interesting
I-
point.
It is an interesting point. Thank you. But my point is more about the definition of selfish, right? I don't think a definition of selfish in terms of gains works.
So what would you define it as then?
I would define it as anything where you do something, make an action that causes significant harm to others at negligible harm to yourself.
Because when I was thinking gain, I was thinking privileges versus a right. I would say, like,
Oh, yeah.
throwing a rock through someone's window to get a little bit of enjoyment for yourself. That breaks their window. That gives you a little bit of enjoyment, right? This is different when it comes to life, like literal existence and being alive. I think it gets difficult there because it's not just a privilege in like happiness. It's literal existence.
That's
You know what I
actually
mean?
a very good point, I think. I think it's quite a good argument to bring up an intrinsic right to life, and that right is inalienable. Yeah, I think that's a very good argument.
So,
for
but that
red.
would be I was about to say that would be an argument for blue.
Well, a right to one's own life.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's why it wouldn't be selfish, because you have a right to your own life. But then you could also be saying that if you want everyone's right to life to not be violated, you'd choose blue.
Yes, because rights can't exist without responsibilities. If you have a right to life, then to some extent or other, you have a responsibility to protect other people's lives. Now, that might just mean, depending on how you put it, you can't kill people. But depending on how you're thinking about this, it might also mean that you have a responsibility to protect other people's lives. Now, to what extent that is debatable, but yeah.
So you're bringing up like divine sort of thinking, like divine law, like we're supposed to help people because it's morally correct. Like yeah, because we don't necessarily have a responsibility for other people's lives. Our responsibility is our own self, like for our own lives.
No, what he's saying is that for there to be a right to live, there has to be a responsibility on everyone else to not take away that right.
Now, of course, it's pretty easy to argue that
Okay.
choosing red doesn't take away that right. I don't. Yeah,
Because people choosing the
Because-
button of they're
Like-
concerned about their own.
I suppose what I'm trying to say is we have a responsibility for our own life, and if the people are choosing blue, willing to die, that's their responsibility.
What you're saying is that you have more of a responsibility to your own right to life than to
other people's. Exactly. So
I would
we
agree with
shouldn't be
that.
held accountable for other people's lives because they come first for their own life in terms of they're responsible for their own life ahead of everyone else's.
So, okay.
Yeah.
For do you think that the people who chose red are selfish? We have 20% who said yes, 57% who said no, and then 23% who said other, which most were being like, it depends on the reasoning, but probably no. So it basically everyone agrees that it's not selfish to choose red. And then also for are blue people naive, we have 7 people who said yes, 23%, 47% who
I
said
think
no,
I said no.
and then 30% who said other, which were it depends but no.
This is a kind of unrelated point. Have you guys seen the Saw movies?
No.
I know
Is it
what
horror?
I know what they're about.
Yes,
Then
but
no.
this is a moral thing, right? So so basically, there's a serial
questioning.
quote unquote killer named Jigsaw who he sees people doing bad stuff, so he puts them in traps that they either have to do significant harm to themselves or die, right? This is just back to the thing where the red is murder. This isn't related, but this is just like a funny little thing. He argues that it's not murder. For instance, one of them was she was a drug addict, so he makes her either dive into a pit of needles to retrieve a key to leave the room, otherwise she will die of nerve gas exposure, or like she could just not dive in and she just dies. He argues that he isn't murdering people because they put themselves into these situations by doing bad things, and by them not sacrificing to save their own lives, they're killing themselves. Now,
Let me just say this is a very questionable.
no, it's
but
not.
I
It's
see
not
your
an
point.
analogy for this thing, but I'm just talking about murder versus.
I think perhaps a
Suicide.
better example
Yes.
of where killing is not murder would be
Yes.
the death penalty.
Yes,
right?
yes, yes,
That's
yes.
the most clear example where, and I don't agree. I think the death penalty is murder.
Yeah, I hate the death penalty.
But it's the most clear example where people say, "Oh, this is killing, but it's not murder. It's not a morally wrong killing." And also, perhaps more agreeably, in self-defense, right? If you had no other choice but to kill someone to survive, which is not that dissimilar
That's
to
applicable, yeah.
Yeah.
to what the red people are doing.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's saying that for self-defense, you have a right to defend yourself and prioritize your own life over someone else's. Which, so the point
But
is, it's not selfish. I think we can all agree on that.
It's a good analogy to an extent because the blue people aren't attacking the red people. So, like, that's sort of where it falls short a little bit.
Yeah.
The red people's lives are still under threat, if you look at it in that way. So maybe, like, the analogy is sound. Yeah. I often
It is, you're right.
counterpoint about, I said, is it naive for the people choosing the red button to hope that everyone will choose the red and everyone will live? But I don't think, I'm pretty sure everyone choosing the red button knows that everyone won't choose it.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's like, is it not, I wouldn't use the word naive, but is it like, I suppose,
Deliberate ignorance?
yeah, to assume that people won't choose the blue one. But
Yeah, I think
don't
they're aware of it, but they're trying not to think about it. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
because
I
I mean, if I were choosing red, I wouldn't want to think about it either.
Yeah.
Some random person said, whilst if the majority who picks the blue button ensures that the whole world survives, it is far more likely that there will be a majority of red. My decision is based on this aspect as I think that people are greedy creatures and will choose red to survive, killing the majority of blue or killing the minority of blue. Sorry to optimists who chose blue,
I-
sad face emoji.
I do agree with that because I don't think it's nihilistic. Is that what's the right term?
Nihilistic?
How should I?
Pessimistic?
Yeah, I just use pessimistic. I don't think it's like wrong to assume that people are. Okay, I suppose it is wrong to assume that people are inherently bad, but if you look at the world today, I think it is wrong to assume that the majority are good people. Plus, as I've said before, I don't think that choosing the blue button is the like morally good option necessarily. So
This person
yeah.
also says that they call themselves selfish. So they say, morally speaking, everyone should choose blue. It ensures the safety of the whole world, making it an easy option. I just believe that if there is no discussion beforehand, a majority of individuals will choose red. If that makes me and those who choose red selfish, so be it.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So, because
Yeah.
this person's like calling themselves selfish.
Well,
And-
they're saying
and-
Yeah, but
they're admitting the possibility of being selfish.
yeah. No, I like this. I like this person. Who is it? No, you don't need to say anything. Okay, but no, I like their.
No, all
Yeah.
all the answers are very eloquent. I'm
Yeah,
just going to
they're
say
good.
that. I'm promoting this random person who definitely no one knows.
But I would say as a red
It's
chooser,
thought through. It's good.
I would
Concise
accept
as well.
being
Unlike mine.
not selfish but pessimistic. Like I could understand how I could
I
be
guess
seen
I'm
as
pretty
selfish.
selfish then.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says in brackets, I guess I'm pretty selfish then.
Maybe he's a bit more self-aware than me then.
Yeah, because I don't think like.
So what did he say on the
So,
red people?
so he thinks, what do you think most will choose red? Does that have an effect on your choice? No. And then says, I think it would be
Yeah,
possible to
I-
change the outcome of the dilemma if there was
I
discussion
misused
beforehand,
the word nihilistic.
as you would be able
My
to
bad.
inform those who
I
don't
was like, what
know
does it mean again?
what to choose, such as adolescents, to choose the morally correct option, blue. And you would also be able to change the minds of a large amount of potential red button pushers by telling them why they should choose blue. Those who want to choose red will likely be ostracized. I don't know what that means.
Like
You
don't know
shunned,
ostrac-
like shunned.
Okay,
yeah.
ostracized by the majority of the population because we can recognize why blue is the correct option. We're just scared of death and are selfish beings who prioritize our own safety and our families first. Therefore, I would change my decision to blue if there is a discussion beforehand because this will greatly impact the decisions of everyone who pushes the button. And I have somewhat of a moral compass despite choosing red at the start.
No, this is a very
This
good
is my
answer. I like
favorite
that.
answer.
That's similar to what I said, but more in depth, I suppose.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
so this person's saying that a lot of people, which I agree with, will choose red because they just want to survive. But if you have a discussion beforehand, despite possible paranoia of still going to die, most people will be like, oh, okay, everyone else is choosing blue. And because this is the morally correct option, quotations, everyone should choose blue.
Yeah. Actually, I still don't understand. I feel like your whole stance is a straw man. Like, like you're like, everyone will choose red, but I'm still gonna choose blue.
No, okay, let me put it this way. Okay, I choose blue. Either I'm wrong and hang on. I choose blue, but I believe everyone will choose red. Either I'm wrong and everyone does choose blue, meaning that no one dies and I survive. Win-win. Or I'm wrong and everyone... Wait, or I'm right. And everyone does end up choosing red and then I die. But
Yeah.
I don't have to see the world, which is
But
created.
the world's already like that.
Yeah, that's I guess a bit of a fallacy in my point is that if the majority do choose red, we're sort of already living in that world. But I still think, because also all my close friends are or like most of my close friends are choosing blue, and I can make that assumption, then I would rather die with them than have to live in a world without them. So yes,
No, I understand your point of view, but I
you
just
guys ate so many
I
chocolates.
do think that your argument falls apart easily.
How so?
No,
Well-
I like that you're strong on your stance, but your argument just doesn't really make sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense.
You're like, well, it's you're just kind of saying
Like
like,
people can know that they most likely will die, but not want to live without their friends.
okay, but
That's a
But-
fine argument.
All right. As I've said for the third time now, we're closing this off. Those have all been very interesting points.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.